listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome everyone. Today I'm joined with my friend JJ Russell. He has been studying the occult for around 7 years and has a deep interest in Hermetic philosophy, ceremonial magic, along with the history underlying it all. This has helped him to eliminate some of the cultural programming and perceive life through a different lens. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. It's been so nice chatting with you a little bit before we get started, and I'm really excited to explore some of these really fascinating topics and stuff with you. So for those who don't know you, could you share just a little bit about yourself and your spiritual journey?
Yeah, my name's Jonathan Russell. I go by JJ, and I've always been on a spiritual path. I had some stuff happen to me when I was younger, and it just woke me up to the whole thing. But probably in 2017, there was the Great American Solar Eclipse. From that point on was a huge shift in my life. And then I've kind of drew the connection between like the 2017 solar eclipse and the 7 years in between the 2024 solar eclipse. So I was into the underground music scene already, and I started finding these pockets of spiritual people, and I kind of brought them all together and got them into the music, and we started throwing like underground parties and stuff in my house. And then I started noticing things like, so there's obviously between 2017 and now the coronavirus happened, but right before that happened, and you can actually look this up, Oak Ridge Laboratory tried to open a portal to another dimension right before all that happened. And then like I was doing some shows at a place in Knoxville, like opening up outside nightclubs and things like that. And like the first time that we ever done it together, that night, the first picture of quantum entanglement had happened. So I was drawing like parallels between things like that, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it was a huge awakening point in my life.
Right. I've heard on some other podcasts, this person was talking about how Oak Ridge is basically sitting on a major energy vortex, and that is why they put the National Laboratory there. And I do believe that there are things that's going on that we don't know about, and that they're not just creating, like chemical weapons or anything like that, that there's something else. And that's why there's so much, it's known as the secret city.
Right.
And like, I don't know if we'll ever know. I mean, they will like threaten you if you tell anyone. I mean, it's like, there's so many clearances and all this stuff. Anyone I know that works out there, like, will not talk, So I think that there are things, potentially going on there that we don't realize, and that they know that they've put it on that sacred land. So
yeah, and also like the atom, we know some things about it, like neutrons, protons, electrons, and things like that, but most of it we don't know what it is.
Right.
But we learned how to break it and blow things up with it before we still don't know what it is, but we know how to blow stuff up with it,
Right.
And I think that's like, I mean, that's kind of the nature of the human mind, to like on a path of seeking, you know what I mean?
Right. So I've talked to you a little bit about the Qabalah and the Tree of Life before we started, but could you explain that a little bit for us, and then maybe help break down some of the different aspects of the Tree of Life? So
the Qabalistic is the received wisdom of the Jews. And for whatever reason, here at the end of the 20th century, there's so much that we can know about it. But for a long time before that, it was secretly guarded.
Right.
And we don't know why that was, but we start off in Malkuth, the very bottom of the tree. And here we're all kind of like sleeping beauty there. And then from Tiferet, right above us, comes down the holy guardian angel and kisses us on the forehead, and we have this big awakening. And there's two ways that we go: up the path of the flaming arrow straight up the center of the tree, which is more of the path of the yogi, or the serpent's path, where you're bouncing back and forth between the poles.
All right. So like the Kundalini awakening.
Yeah.
Okay. That's very interesting. So there's different sort of paths with Kabbalah, and we've talked about like the different spellings. Like one is more of the Jewish, and then there's the Christian mysticism.
Yeah. So.
And then there's like the esoteric, right?
Yeah. Qabalah with a Q is the esoteric.
Okay.
Kabbalah with a C is Christian mysticism, and Kabbalah with a K is is like more of like the Jewish mysticism.
Right. So there are different paths that do study it outside of just Judaism.
Yeah. So when you study like the esoteric form of it, then it's like it's your own path. You can hang anything on it. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Because I feel like, as I look at the tree of life, it sort of comes alive for me, and I'm able to say, okay, well, that sounds a lot like, things that I heard in like a Kundalini yoga class. And that's coming more from like the Vedas and stuff like that, which, predates some of the other stuff. So it's interesting because I feel like somehow it holds the secrets within all religions. And it doesn't necessarily just belong to one or the other, that it has aspects of a lot of just the esoteric wisdom in general.
Yeah, so like Chesed is like all your like your creator deities, and even like your Geburah, for instance. Geburah is Mars, the god of war, and every god of war from every pantheon can be hung right there.
Ah, okay.
This right here is Venus, so all your Venusian spirits Aphrodite, all that can all be hung right there.
Right, right.
Like I think it's Odin. Like your gods of lightning,
Right.
all be hung right there. Your messengers, like right there in Tiferet, like your Christ figures and all that, can all be hung right there.
Okay.
So it all fits nice into. Everything, you can put everything on it.
So it overlaps a little bit with astrology in some ways.
Yeah, and then this is Mercury. So like, and it works with life too, because Mercury is the fastest cycling planet.
Moving planet, yeah.
It's the mind.
Right,
This right here is the heart. So when the temple of Venus falls, when it falls, the heart is trying to convince the mind it's stronger, and the mind's trying to convince the heart that it's stronger. And these are low dimensions of consciousness.
Right, and the lines are like bridging.
Yeah,
acting as bridges.
Yeah, they're also to show us that everything is connected.
Right.
So you can connect everything to it.
Right. So it's all, a part of like a great story.
Yes.
And there is no like separation between, the mind and the heart, really.
Yeah.
There's that illusion, but, they're always connected in some way.
Right.
So, with the lower and as above, so below, there's different worlds or realms in which we can look at different parts of the tree, right?
Oh yeah. Also, I want to say this: like whenever like heart and brain coherence happens here, this is what's called the knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel.
Okay.
And then like I said, when you fall, the temple of Venus falls, and the mind's trying to convince the heart that it's stronger. But right here is the brain and heart coherence.
Okay.
And then, there's a number of ways you can look at it, but from right here to here, okay, so these are the initiatory degrees. We start off as a neophyte, 0, and that means newly planted. And then we move to a zelator, which is 1 equals 10, so you're here and here at the same time.
Okay.
And then you move into 2, 9, and 3, 8, and then 4, 7, and then 5, 6, and 6, 5. So when you're going up and down at the same time.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? As you're going up and down. Then when you get to this point right here, this is the point where we're trying to get at, the Christ consciousness point. And then when we're in 5, 6, 5 plus 6 is 11. When we switch, 5 plus 6 is 11, 11, 11.
Okay.
So that's about right at the center of the initiation point.
Interesting. So there is something deeper with everyone seeing 1111 everywhere than just...
I believe so. And it was a while before I realized this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a while after my awakening that I realized that, and this is the degree that people are striving for, like in the Golden Dawn and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they want to be at.
Right. Okay. It's interesting that you say neophyte, because at the very beginning of my spiritual journey, I've always been lightly spiritual, but like as far as seeking wisdom, I had a dream, and I specifically remember this loud voice calling me a neophyte. And I remember asking myself, what is a neophyte? And then I was at McKay's and I was reading the back of this book, and it was like about El Moira or something, and it said the word neophyte, and it stood out so much to me because I was like, I've never actually seen that word written. And so the word neophyte was actually one of the first steps in my journey as far as like actually starting to read and explore and find books to help guide and teach me versus just living my life in a spiritual way.
Right.
So that's interesting that that's a part of the journey within Qabbalah as well.
Absolutely. And it's also interesting that that's the name they chose for the person on the Matrix.
Neo, yeah, all right. Because in the beginning, he's just like a regular person, and he ends up stepping into that over the course of the movie, where he eventually, reaches
realization.
Yeah, The Matrix. I watch it, every year or so, and every time I watch it, because I'm studying and learning as I go, I see different parts of it and I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I not notice it? And I don't know if the writers even fully, I think it's like almost like myths. It's sort of like a living story. And as we live, I'll be like, wow, that's very interesting that, this person's name was that, or, there's so much of it that's interconnected, and I guess that maybe that's the hero's journey for us. Like, it's all like we're all living out different versions of that journey.
Yeah. And another thing that I want to say about Qabalah is Alice in Wonderland is a close parallel to, because it's not about the ascent, it's about the descent. And that's what Qabalah is about. And it's like Alice is big, and then she jumps into a black hole, she drinks poison, gets small, and then all this stuff happens to her, and then she gets big again. So it's big, small, big, small, big, small.
Right. It's interesting too, because we were talking a little bit about the Eleusinian mysteries earlier before we started recording, and you think about Persephone, she was pulled into the underworld. She's actually going down.
Yeah.
And that's when the journey really starts. And that's so similar to the hero's journey as well, because we always have that entering the cave. But that's really when she becomes her most powerful, and steps into what she's kind of meant to become, which is like the queen of the underworld.
Right.
But she still comes back up to spend, time with her mother, and towards the at the top of it, comes out of the underworld every so often and brings that, I feel like, that wisdom that she acquires while she's deep down, and then shares it with all of us, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I never thought about Alice in Wonderland's, just until that moment, like sort of falling down, like she kind of, it's not like she's not even really choosing. It's just, she's just sort of, in the field naively, and then that curiosity, right? And that's kind of how Persephone was when Pluto or Hades sort of finds her and pulls her down. So I'm like, I've never noticed that parallel till just that moment.
And also on Matrix, it's Follow the White Rabbit,
Right. It's pretty cool how it's interconnected.
I think that Alice in Wonderland and The Matrix both was, those stories come from another place.
Right. I do think, when I studied a little bit of the collective unconscious and things like that, it's like the universe is speaking to us through these archetypes, and I think these writers are channeling it. And I'm not saying that they're not using their own imagination and that it's not coming from, their higher self or whatever. But I think because we're all tuned into the collective, that sometimes we're writing these stories and we don't really know exactly how it's interconnected, but it is, and when you start looking at, the symbology of this and that, you're like, wow, I can see. And I don't think the authors always are aware of it. I mean, some of them are. I think that there's a lot of occultists that became writers and they hid it into everything. But I think some of them are just straight writing it, opening their minds to it, and the characters come to them.
Yeah. You said you write poetry.
Yeah.
Like, I've done some of that through my poetry. Do you care if I read you one?
I would love that.
Reaching down through dimensions above, ascending the planes with intentions of love. There is nothing to do. There is nowhere to go. They are speaking the truth and they don't even know. I try to be good for goodness sake, but I'm constantly dreaming when I should be awake. But if I can learn to walk before I leap, maybe then I can open my eyes in my sleep. It's all happening like I think, so it would seem. It's all flowing into you. Consciousness is a stream. The clear path opens and crowns the 7, the spiritual process, and the number 11, exploring the depths of my inner existence, manifesting my thoughts with patience and persistence. It's so easy. Soon you will find, just relax into the form because the body is mind.
I love that.
Thank you.
How beautiful. I mean, it was like perfectly aligned with exactly what we're talking about. It's just, I think we're all channels for the divine.
Yeah.
And we can do it consciously or unconsciously, but I think at the end of the day, we're channeling it.
Yeah.
So it's really cool when you start studying some of these paths, because I feel like it gives you a little bit more, not control, because I don't know if we ever fully have control, but more like that ability to recognize, I'm playing out this myth, or I'm in this cycle, or I'm at this part of the tree right now, or, there's plenty of times where I've looked around and been like, oh shit, I'm in the underworld.
Absolutely.
And like, I didn't even, it just like Persephone, it takes her, she's just like smelling the flowers, and I've had a couple life events where I was just so blissfully happy. And then I was taken deep into the underworld, and I'm like, how in the world
did I get here?
Yeah. And I think that happens to all of us, but through, it happens differently. But that's where these stories are alive within us. And when we study things, I love fairy tales. I don't think that they're just like random stories. I think the fact that everyone has watched Alice in Wonderland or read it, that becomes a collective myth at that point, and it goes beyond just some child story. Everybody knows and could speak about the symbolism in Alice in Wonderland because we've all been exposed to it. So it's so cool because like when we have these experiences, now we can use these stories to help relate them.
Yeah, well, like
to others.
Tweedledee and Tweedledum, like Gemini the twins.
Ah,
I think I was deep into Alice in Wonderland and was able to like just like anything. Once I studied it enough, I was just able to like live it.
Right. It's interesting because I was like obsessed with it as a child. Like I've painted, the Cheshire Cat and the Mad Hatter, and I wasn't even looking for, I wasn't trying to decipher any symbolism in it. I was just so drawn to it, this upside down, wonky, weird story. But for some reason, it did seem that it had a deeper like level to it.
Oh yeah, and also, the bottom part of the tree is more like the Alice in Wonderland part.
Okay.
Right here, this point right here, it's the dot, the unspeakable Sephiroth, like Sephiroth, and it's like that point is called the abyss, and it's the throat chakra. When you cross that, you're in the Alice through the looking glass. It's coming through in reverse.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And then, so as like Alice through the looking glass is when we cross the abyss, and then we meet
sort of like a guardian.
The dweller of the abyss, Chronozone, which is in Alice in Wonderland.
Okay.
And that is where, and the only thing that we can do at that point when we meet Chronozone is take a left-handed path, or we become a babe of the abyss.
Okay, that's interesting. I've studied a little anthroposophy, and within certain initiations, there's this being the guardian of the threshold, and I don't know if in this path it's sort of like it can be a little of a scary experience, and you have to kind of face your fears. And I feel like at that point you have to really be a seeker. You have to really want it, and that it's sort of like evokes fear for a reason, because it's not necessarily meant for everyone to cross that point.
Right.
Right. And it's like, that is why it's considered an initiation. And in order to be initiated, you have to want that, right? You have to constantly choose, yes, this is where I want to go next. You know, Neo had the choice of taking those.
We like, I mean, whether people want to admit it or not, we consciously chose it. You know what I mean?
Right.
We willingly done it. Mm-hmm. And so right here, the top three when above the abyss. Mm. So there's Saturn and his wife Rhea, I think's what it said, how you're pronounced. And they keep having kids together. And Saturn keeps swallowing their kids.
Yeah.
And when baby Jupiter, Jove, or Jehovah was born, the creator being, she fed him a stone. Mm-hmm. When she fed him that stone, he threw up, and all the, like, Jove come out right here. Mm-hmm. And was like, well, there's no other gods here. I must be him. And then all the other ones come plopping down the tree of life. But before that, there was never a microcosm. Until that happened, like, he kept swallowing the kids to keep from there being a microcosm. When she snuck and fed him that stone, out they came.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. You know, I've studied quite a bit of Greek mythology, but the way it's all connecting within the Tree of Life is something that is a little bit different, fresh perspective for me. So that's really cool to see how it's all right there within that, you know, little sigil that's drawn out. So
it's so much could fit on it. And let's see, between Binah and Hokmah, like when you're in that dimension of consciousness of Binah, mm-hmm. and it's like the womb of creation.
Right.
In order to get to Hokmah, the Empress Tarot card is the path between them. So it's the stepping stone. And it's like, it's a different way of reading tarot, like when you're using them as stepping stones this way to get from one dimension to the next. And then,
so do people ever put their tarot cards like down in this Tree of Life, kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah, I have. And also, if you look up the tarot of ceremonial magic, mm-hmm. it shows you how you can do it as a mandala. All right. How they're all like, this thing comes out of this thing, and it's all a big mandala.
Right, it's all one story with just different stepping stones within each part of the story.
Right. So to get from like Binah to Hokmah, and another way you can look at it is the doors to a temple. Mm-hmm. So the Empress Tarot card is the door, and then there's the Hebrew letter Dalet is on that Empress Tarot card. So you can look at it, Dalet is a key to that door.
Right.
And yeah, you can just go deeper and deeper into it to figure out the steps to get from here to here.
Right. I really love how it's all a part of the journey, and like it keeps showing up in all the, you know, there's these different, what's the word when things are, correspondences.
Yes.
And so you say Binah, but, you know, you could also call her something else, or, you know, look at her as a tarot card, or look at her as, you know, like the feminine principle or whatever. So that's how it almost, it's able to be crossed between different cultures even, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So it's like the blueprint for kind of everything in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like it's everything that's on the tree is contained within everything. Mm-hmm. Like every one of the Sephirot themselves also have a reflection of the tree in it. You know what I mean?
Right, which is interesting if you think even about the body. You know, each part of the body has the whole within it. So you do like reflexology on the foot, and the foot has all the organs, you know, that you could touch this and it's that. Or you take a drop of blood and you can read what's going on within that person's whole body. So that's actually interesting too, that it's like all you need is just that little piece to get, and then it turns into everything. It's like everything's in the small aspect of it.
Yeah, you can take, just like I sent you, you can also look at the Qabalistic world absolute and tack it onto that story, and you can just those top three, that top triangle, you mm-hmm. can expand it into so much.
Right. That's really cool. So what's significant about some of the Hebrew letters, and how has this understanding of them benefited you in your studies?
So the there's a book called the Sefer Yetzirah, and the Sefer Yetzirah is the book of formation. So it was like the first Kabbalistic text to really kind of surface, and it explains how this creating force in the universe rearranged the Hebrew letters to create everything around us. So, like, the Hebrew letter Aleph, for instance, is air, and it reaches into infinite heights and seals it. And then it reaches into eternal depths and seals it. And then the Hebrew letter Mem, reaches out to eternal leftness and eternal rightness and seals both ends of that. And then the Hebrew letter Shin is eternal frontness, eternal backness. So now you're starting to get a 3-dimensional cube.
Right. It's like a Merkaba or something.
Yeah, it's never stops expanding. So the first 3 Hebrew mother letters are air, water, and fire. And I've also been able to look at it like salt, mercury, and sulfur, because mercury means it's water, and Mem is also water.
Right.
So you can even kind of draw parallels between that. So it starts off with those first 3 Hebrew letters, and it's up, down, left, right, front to back. Mm-hmm. And then the 7 double letters are the 7 hermetic planets, and it starts creating the lines of the cube around the sides. And then the 12 simple letters are the 12 zodiac signs.
Okay.
So it shows the elements, the fundamental elements, the 7 hermetic planets, and the 12 zodiac signs.
Wow.
And you can also all those Hebrew letters are on the tarot cards themselves. Mm-hmm. So the first 3 Hebrew letters, Aleph, Mem, and Shin, mean leader, water, and fire. So you can even draw out right there as a baptism of fire. It starts the journey, and then use the other letters as stepping stones.
Right. And so many of all this language you're using, I've been diving into alchemy and trying to kind of understand some of the Hermetic philosophy and how it all, and I'm like, this is the language, that, and you're speaking it, and it's like it's lighting up things for me, because they talk a lot about sulfur and mercury and salt and all that, and it's like it was hard for me to ground it. I'm like, but what does it mean? But as you're speaking, I'm like, okay, this is how it's all connected.
It's from what I've been able to understand, it's all talking about the same thing in different ways. Because alchemy means black earth, and I think it's like Masons, for instance, they dance in the dark. They put on the robes and they dance in the dark, and it's about dancing in those dark places.
Right, which also sounds a little bit like Persephone
Yes.
in the underworld.
Yes.
And so, in a lot of ways, I feel like we all go through those underworld experiences. And if you can, dance in the dark, I'm like hearing the song in my head, then I feel like it doesn't overwhelm you as much.
Right.
And you sort of find that comfort in chaos. And I feel like that is where the magic is, because so many people get taken and they can't process it. And it's just it's like full destruction. But if you can dance through it, then you can transmute chaos into something beautiful, and that's what magic really is.
Yeah. I mean, also the Sefer Yetzirah and all that stuff. I mean, with the tarot cards, we go before Anubis, the god of death, in the Egyptian underworld, and he weighs our heart against a feather, and if our heart is heavier than the feather, he throws us to the crocodiles. Mm-hmm. Well, the tarot cards are stepping stones to keep you above the crocodiles.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. When I was first reading the Book of the Dead and studying the Egyptian stuff, that part, getting fed to the crocodiles, scared me, because it felt like true annihilation. But then when I started thinking about reincarnation, that it's the annihilation of the ego, because you get a new personality each time.
Right.
But to me, I was like, is that like nothingness? Like, is that true? Like the soul dies, or, because I didn't fully understand it. But I do think that that's like, okay, have to come back, going to be reborn and try again and try again. So there is still, you always get another chance, in a lot of ways. And there's always going to be more tests. And, at the end of the day, that's where like kind of grace kind of comes in. And that's where we can sort of relax a little bit and be like, well, I'm just at a different point and getting tested on something different. But like there are no true mistakes, because you will get cycled back through, or you will come against it again.
And like with, I think it's Buddhism, it's Zenith and Nadir. Mm-hmm. It's about that, like the Zenith is the peak of our experience, mm-hmm. and Nadir is the death, or the depths. And one who is in Nadir is fixing to go to Zenith, and one who's in Zenith is fixing to go to Nadir.
Right. Because we're always like battling these opposites, and that's the whole thing with Model of the Psyche and Staying Young. It's like finding to reconcile the opposites. Like that's actually the key. That
is the key.
But until you find that fulcrum, you're going to keep ricocheting back and forth, and even looking at a lot of people's past lives, I'll see these patterns of like poverty, or, then they'll be rich, and like it's like they're the victim and they're the perpetrator. And it's like we keep doing this until we reconcile the opposites, or figure out, wow, I'm in a myth right now, and I keep playing, this character, but I can actually find the middle ground here if I recognize that I'm in a story, right?
Yeah. And that's what Keter is about, the very, very top of the tree. That's the reconciliation of all opposites, to identify with the one. And then above that is 3 negative veils of nothingness, Ein Sof, and Ein Sofar. And we get ourselves back to the place where we identify with the one, reconcile the opposites, and then we identify with the nothing.
Right. Beautiful. Could we talk a little bit more about the major arcana, and how understanding these themes and archetypes can actually help us with on the path?
So, the major arcana are the paths, but the paths themselves, and there's a number of ways that you can look at it, like the Sephiroth themselves is the experience we're having outside of ourselves, and the path is the experience we're having inside of ourselves. So there's a number of ways that you can look at it, but that's those are the paths between the Sephiroth. And you study so basically what it is, you can't know who you are until you know where you are. You got to find your place, then you can figure out who you are. Okay. But you're never going to figure out who you are until you figure out where you are.
Right.
And that's what the tree is there to help us for.
Right. And that's very similar to like astrology,
yeah.
Because we have the nodes, and one is showing us, where we're coming from, and the other shows us where we're going, which helps us figure out, well, where are we now?
Yeah.
And in India, I've heard a couple people who've went there say that a lot of times when they greet, they'll say, where are you coming from? Where are you going? Versus saying hello. And that's sort of a reminder to keep you in that present moment. Like, well, where are you right now?
Yeah.
Where have you been, and where are you going, and where are you?
I like that.
Here, and I think it kind of just keeps it fresh in our memory, or in our mind, so that we can stay present in, oh, yes, I am on a journey,
Oh, that's who I am.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for reminding me. So, yeah, I really, really love that.
And another thing I wanted to mention about in Christian mysticism is in Hebrew, the way John the Baptist's name is spelled, it's Yana, and it's Ginana. Mm-hmm. Am I saying that right?
Yana.
Like when you're at, like, who am I?
Right.
Yoga.
Right. The I think it's Yana.
Yana yoga. Mm-hmm. So that's what, John the Baptist's name is spelled Yana.
Oh, that is very interesting. And Yana yoga being sort of the yoga of the mind.
Yes.
To seek and study knowledge.
Yes, and the Knights Templars, that's what the Baphomet was the head of John the Baptist.
Ah. Wow. This is gonna. I'm gonna have to come back to this episode and take some notes so that I could remember this, because you're definitely giving lots of good little keys, and that's kind of how it is. We get the key, and once you have the keys, then you can look at the map, and it starts to make more sense. So.
Right. Like I've been studying it, and my only goal is, like, I'm not telling, like, people listening. I'm not telling you how to think about it. All I'm trying to get you to do is expand upon it more. You know
right,
what I mean?
to see how you could work with it and the ways that it, can be embodied and studied.
Yeah, how much further can you take it?
Right, because it can, it's kind of probably infinite ways of, once you learn the symbols and learn how it's connected to everything, you can see it in all these different aspects of your life. And it helps you study the universe even, because
Yes.
as above, so below. So as we're studying this within our own journey, then we can sort of reflect on, well, this is also what is going on in the cosmos, in the greater story.
Right.
And I'm just the macro version of, the micro.
Yeah, I'm just this tiny little speck.
Right. But it is connected.
Yeah, for sure it is.
Just like that drop of blood has the code of the rest of the body. I think that that's how we are as humans, that we are a part of the all. And within each of us, we have this wisdom. We can't actually be separated from everything, because we are everything. And yet it's nothing. Like you say, it's funny little paradox.
It is funny paradox.
So yeah, meditating on both of those will take you places.
Yeah. Well, Anubis, the god of death, is always on the opposite side.
Right. That Shiva energy.
Yeah.
So could you explain a little bit about the 4 different Kabbalistic worlds?
Okay, so you have 4 different worlds on the Tree of Life. The top triangle is Absolute. It's the archetypal world. And then there's a descending, it's a up triangle, and then there's a descending triangle called Braya, creation. And then there's another triangle called Yetzirah, formation, and then there's the bottom one, which is the bottom point on the tree, Malkut, which is Asaya, the physical. And these 4 Kabbalistic worlds are represented by the 4 letters, Yod, He, Vav, He, which is Jehovah. And so Absolute is like, there was something out there that was saying, like, if these people don't find a way to rest, they're not going to make it. They might die if they don't find a way to rest. So he has the idea for he doesn't even think of chair. He just thinks these people need butt resters.
Right.
And then it comes down to Braya, the world of creation, and those angels down there, they draw the blueprint for a chair. And then that blueprint comes out, and the chair is formed in Yetzirah, and then it manifests in Asaya.
Okay. So there's just like different realms. It's almost like there's like a trickle down of information.
Yeah, and if you, like, that's just the idea of how they function. If you go into them, like, deeper and study them more in depth, there's a lot there.
Right.
Yeah, to each Kabbalistic world, there's so much. I'm just giving you, like, a basic rundown.
Right. It's interesting because I've never made this connection, but with the records, it is sort of a layer of information. We have the Akashic records, which is the collective book of life, the story of everything. And that's where the information starts from. And then but it's filtered in. So if you open your records, then you have your guides.
Right.
So it comes down through the guides. But then there's this other level, which everyone has access to all the time, which is their main guides, like their ancestors and things, but also the angels. Everyone always has access to the angels. And then it filters through you. And so it is like these 4 layers, even when I'm working with the records, that the information is like moving through all of those in order to get to me. And that's where it's like a download, and you're like, oh, okay, I can see this now. Thank you. So I feel like somehow I'm in those different worlds.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We're all,
regularly.
These are all different dimensions of consciousness. And if you, like, on this page right here, it shows the grades. It shows our grades. We have a name for that grade for every place that we're at.
Right.
So there's 10 Sephiroth on the tree. And just like there's 4 Kabbalistic worlds, for instance, every one of these Sephiroth are a degree of our initiation. Malkuth, or Malkuth, however you want to say it, is the bottom point. That's Earth. And then there is a below that. When you fall below Malkuth on the Tree of Life, you go into what's called the Qlipoth, or the Qlipoth. And it's like the shadow of the tree. You know what I mean? So Neophyte is below Malkuth. And it's like, it means newly planted. And then we move into Zelator, which is in Yesod, and this is the lunar energy. So Neophyte is below the tree, and Zelator is Earth.
Okay.
So Zelator is great energy or enthusiasm, a zealous student whose first duty is to blow the fire that heated the crucible of the alchemist. And then we go into, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, it's like Theoricus. That's in Yesod, the lunar energy, and it means beholder. It means beholder. So then we move into Hod, and Hod means splendor. So Hod, when we move into Hod, we're a practitious, and it pertains to action concealed with business. And then we move into a philosophus in Netzach, and that's your Hod is Mercury, and Netzach is Venus. So we move into Netzach, and it's victory. It's called victory as well. And then we become a philosophus, which is a lover of wisdom. And then we come into Tiferet in the center of the tree, and become an adeptus minor, which is a lesser adept. And then we move into Geburah, which is strength. And for me, this is like the dark night of the soul part of the journey. And it's like, it's stripping away the parts of yourself that you don't need, essentially. And we become an adeptus major, a spiritual aspirant who has mastered union with the 4 elements and passage into the tomb. So that is also when we cross over the veil of Paro-Keth. And if I'm not mistaken, that's where we become a Rosicrucian.
Okay.
We move from the inner order to the outer order.
Okay. So that kind of is like the Rosicrucian cross, which is like mind over matter, and that's sort of that middle point before you get to the higher aspect.
And also, if you've ever looked at the rose cross, it's a center point, and it's the Hebrew letters like expanding outwards. Like it's all the Hebrew letters in the center of it. Like it's the heart of Christ, basically.
Right.
But it's also, you can look at it like a Big Bang, like the Big Bang happened and all the elements and everything come out of it, you know. There's so many ways you can look at it.
Right.
Then we move into Chesed, and that's an adeptus exemptus. An exemptus means to remove or separate.
Okay.
Then we become, when we reach Binah, we're a master of mysticism. Then we get into Hokmah, and then we're the Magus, which is a member of a priestly caste.
Okay.
And then we get here to the very top point, and we're Ipsimus, we're own self.
Okay. So this is like the journey of the soul.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And so these are like the different degrees of initiation on the path.
Yes.
And so, you know, in different lifetimes, maybe you be, you know, on the, it doesn't necessarily one lifetime you hit the.
I never thought about that.
Right.
Maybe this has just been this lifetime just been 1 degree.
Right. That is interesting. So does this have to do with, you know, the different degrees in Freemasonry a little bit, like that they're sort of taking this path, and each time they're kind of leveling up into, you know, like that, oh, now they're an adept, or now they're, you know.
Yeah, so like the goal with Qabalah is that we become an Adam Kadmon, which is a perfected human. And it goes, you can go all the way back to where Adam starts naming things. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Before that point, everything was nameless.
Right.
And then he starts naming things again.
Interesting.
And the Tao Te Ching hits that abyss crossing moment perfectly. The way that can be named is not the eternal way. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth, and the named is the mother of 10,000 things. Those who have desires see the manifestations, and those who are desireless see the mystery. And it cuts right through it cuts right through the bullshit.
Right. Yeah, when I was studying Hermeticism, I mean, it's all about the all. And if you can give it a name, then it's not the all, because then it's just an aspect. So when you think about all the different religions and different beliefs, it's just an aspect. But none of it is the all, because even the all is a word.
Right.
And then it takes away from it. So it's literally everything.
Oh, you can't even say the word, because the word infinite has a definition and a meaning.
Right.
You put it in a box to even say it. And
Exactly.
you try to define it, then you've and if I'm standing outside and I hear a dog bark, bow wow is a better name for a dog than the word dog. You know what I mean? Because at least I'm explaining what it's doing, instead of trying not to say what it is, because we don't know what that is either.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And the definition could change person to person, language to language.
So if it's,
but it's still going to say bow wow in every language.
Exactly. So it's Monday. If I'm standing outside, it's Monday, November 20th, 2023 at 5:02, and I see a dog bark and the wind blows and the leaves rustle in a certain way, and I can try to explain that, but that moment will never happen again.
Right.
I mean, it can never be that date. It can never be that time again.
So you can't really grasp it, even though you can try to understand it. But you can't really grasp it. So a lot of it, and I guess that is sort of the Jnana Yoga, is the mental exercise of it. It's exercising the mind, but it doesn't necessarily have to say, oh, this is literal, or this is, it's always expanding, and it's just different ways of viewing the all, right? But it's, unnameable.
Yeah.
So as soon as you give it a name, you've now...
It's the nameless, yeah.
Which is cool. I mean, it's fine. You can create as many gods as you want. And that's the whole thing with the Hindu pantheon. I mean, it's just like, oh, now we have a new god, well, because it's all different varieties of the all.
Yeah, so the polytheism, the best way that I've ever heard it, polytheism, for instance. So Venus, Aphrodite, that's your loving, your goddess energy, you know what I mean? But they're just aspects of the one, has been told throughout time and given different names. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not a dimension that's outside of us.
Right.
All the polyistic deities are all just aspects of the one, of the only one thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I totally agree with that. All right. So we're getting close to wrapping up. My last question is, can you share a little bit about the symbolism of the dying and rising God?
Okay, so the old formula, there's two tarot decks really kind of run with the Hermeticism, and it's the Golden Dawn and Thelema. So there's key differences in each deck, like in the Golden Dawn, and the Golden Dawn is the formula of the dying and rising God. The Temperance card has been replaced with art in the Thelemic decks, and it just depends on whichever one that you follow. And the last card in the Golden Dawn deck is Judgment, whereas Thelema is a new Aeon. Mm-hmm. And the Golden Dawn is the formula of the dying and rising God. So like I was telling you earlier, there's Zenith and Nadir, and one who's in Nadir is fixing to go to Zenith. It's to escape that cycle of reincarnation of death, birth, death, birth, death, birth. That's what the formula of the dying and rising God is.
That's interesting. And, that is a pattern in many, religions. And it's funny because, I just did a deep dive in Hermeticism because I did a whole episode on it. But, the whole thing with Osiris and Isis, that I didn't think about, Jesus' story being so aligned. And on the episode, we talked a little bit about how Ficino noticed the pattern and was like, I think Jesus was an initiate you know, of, you know, the Serapis cult, which is, you know, all about the dying
Right.
god Osiris.
And he spent, you know, a good portion of his life in Egypt,
Right.
where he
Right.
would have been exposed, no doubt, to the, I mean, if not the schools themselves, the symbolism on the walls.
Right.
There's no way you couldn't see it.
Right. And then, you know, the Zeitgeist movie, I don't know if you ever saw it, the documentary, it just showed you like all of these, I mean, things that I would probably never have been introduced to those cultures at all, but it's like literally in almost every single culture, there's an example of a dying and rising God. And so it's like, I feel like it's important, and it's some, you know, it's a story that's within us,
Yeah.
you know, and like we can be like resurrected, you know what I mean? It's like, yes, sure, it might have happened, you know, or not happened, but for these other deities, but it's
a dimension that we're all experiencing.
yeah, it's like a process that we're all gonna go through. You know, we can all be reborn and like rise above the ashes in a way.
Yeah, so I'll give you a thing here about how you can connect. So in between, like when we're in Adeptus Minor, moving to Adeptus Major, the Justice Tarot card is the tarot card right there. So here's the thing I have right here. The Sword of Justice, the weapon of Elohim Gibor, which is the god of Geburah, the god of this point, is fearful. It can be swift and devastating in its cutting away of what is no longer needed. It can make war, it can enforce peace, but the sword has two edges, one of which destroys and the other of which consecrates, as it is conferring of knighthood. The cutting away of the negative aspects of the body and soul is a return to purity and consecration. The idea of renewed purity is reinforced by the attribution of Libra, which is the justice, and the kidneys, which cleanse waste from the body system. Another parallel suggested by some writers is that the path relates to purgatory, a condition of consciousness after death, where the soul is cleansed of the dross of its earthly incarnation. So, yeah, that's one way you can use it.
Right. So this information can be very relevant if you can make the connection with how it's, you know, the story of our soul, like our sojourn, like, and that we're all, you know, at different levels, different parts of the tree. And then you can also see how our relationships with each other can help. You know, this person could help, you know, lift you up in a way, or this person might bring you back down, or, you know, I don't know if it's always an ascent, you know, kind of an up and down probably at times.
Yeah, that's where, with the initiation part of it, we're going up and down at the same time. As we go into 110, we're in 10-1.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? We're going up and down at the same time all the way through it.
Right. So it's like the inhale and the exhale.
Exactly.
You know, is very important. Interesting. This has been really fascinating.
There was one more thing. This right here is out of this little picture right here is out of the Sefer Yetzirah, and it shows those 4 Kabbalistic worlds stacked on top of each other, but the top one is poof.
Right.
Yeah. The head's just expanded.
Wow.
And here's one about the Death Tarot card, which is between Theorocious and Philosophus. Okay. Death, the gate of initiation. Oh, how soft is the air and serene is the sky for those who have passed through the black gate of Apophis the Destroyer. Death begins with a knock in which life answers, then death banishes all forces of the operation and declares the speech silent. The degrees that I've listed here, you can go into the Golden Dawn degrees and read like the whole rituals of it. And then if you do that, because it's these huge rituals for every degree, you go through the rituals for the degree and then pull out the parts that resonate and then reconstruct it all for yourself.
Right. Make it personal.
Yeah, you reconstruct the whole system for yourself.
Interesting. Too, thinking about like the Masons being builders and like working with matter and creating things out of the form that's available.
Right.
So maybe that's what it's, you know, maybe about at a deeper level. Yeah,
and what's really a trip is how well the Golden Dawn system parallels, considering McGregor Mather's just just made up the whole thing. But it's that's where you're getting into the realm of quantum physics, that it was meant to be but wasn't meant to be kind of thing. You know what I mean? It came through him, but there was no...
Was he channeling something
right.
greater? Yeah, because we're all connected, like, to the collective unconscious, so...
Yeah, one of the first things they do is they put a bag over your head. They put a black bag over your head, and you have to go in to the temple, and you have to say, I got myself into this. You have to admit before all of your brothers that I got myself into this, only I can get myself out of it, before they'll pull the bag off your head. If not, they leave the bag on your head, and you just leave you wandering in the dark.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Cool. Well, this has been a wonderful episode.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming out here and creating this magic with me.
Cool, man. I'm glad you had me.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for tuning in. Check us out next time on the Astral Hour.